It was a bright, warm afternoon when the Miller family decided to escape the city noise and spend a quiet day near the forest's edge. The sun filtered gently through the tall trees, casting dappled shadows over the grassy picnic spot they'd chosen. Little Jamie, barely 2 years old, was full of energy and wonder. His chubby legs carried him eagerly toward the nearby woods, fascinated by the fluttering butterflies and chirping birds. His mother, Sarah, was busy unpacking sandwiches and fruit while his father, David, set up the picnic blanket. They kept a watchful eye on Jamie, but the toddler's excitement often pulled him beyond their reach. He toddled toward a small clearing just beyond the trees, where the soft ground suddenly looked different, darker and muddier. Jamie didn't notice the difference. His attention was caught by a cluster of wildflowers, and he stepped forward, with wide eyes and open curiosity. Then, without warning, the earth beneath him gave way. The ground wasn't firm, but a thick, sucking mud pit concealed by leaves and grass. In an instant, Jamie's little feet sank deep, and he struggled to stay upright. Panic flashed across his innocent face as his legs slipped further into the sticky trap. "Jamie!" Sarah's voice cracked with sudden fear as she realized her son had vanished from sight. David dropped the picnic basket, eyes darting toward the woods. "Where did he go? Jamie!" Their voices echoed in the quiet air, but no reply came, only a soft, desperate gurgle. Jamie's tiny hands reached out, grasping at the muddy edges as he sank deeper. His breath caught, but he was too young to understand what was happening. Tears welled in his eyes, and he called out again, his voice trembling, "Mama! Daddy!" Nearby, hidden in the shadows of the trees, something stirred. A soft rustle of leaves alerted a watchful pair of eyes. A German shepherd mother, sleek and alert, moved cautiously toward the sound. Her ears twitched, and her nose lifted to the air, detecting something unusual. Fear, confusion, and vulnerability. The dog's instincts told her this was no ordinary noise. She crept closer to the muddy clearing, keeping her puppies close behind. The litter tumbled over each other in innocent play, unaware of the tension in the air. The mother's gaze locked onto a small figure struggling in the mud. The forest fell silent except for the baby's soft cries and the distant calls of his parents. The German shepherd stopped at the muddy edge, her nose twitching as she assessed the scene. The child was stuck deep enough that he couldn't pull himself out, and the mud clung to his legs like glue. Sarah and David rushed toward the clearing, their panic mounting with every step. They could see their son's head bobbing, just above the mud, his arms flailing weakly. Sarah dropped to her knees, shouting, "Hold on, Jamie! We're coming!" David looked around desperately for something to help. The thick mud made it impossible to reach in without risking more danger. He called emergency services on his phone, his voice shaky as he explained the situation. Meanwhile, the German shepherd mother lowered herself slowly toward Jamie, cautious but curious. She sniffed at the baby's tiny hand and then gently nudged his muddy foot with her nose. Jamie blinked at her, unsure if he should be afraid or comforted. The puppies wagged their tails and inched closer, sensing their mother's calm. The baby's crying slowed as the presence of the dog soothed him in an unexpected way. Sarah watched, in awe, momentarily forgetting the fear as she saw the unusual bond forming between her son and the animal. But the danger was far from over. The mud continued to pull Jamie down, and the forest, though beautiful, was a vast place where help could be delayed. The family's voices grew louder, the dog's protective stance firmer, and the tension thickened like the mud that held the toddler trapped. The rescue was just beginning, and no one could predict how the dog's loyalty and the family's hope would collide in the moments to come. The forest around the muddy clearing seemed to hold its breath. The bright afternoon light filtered through the tall canopy in soft beams, but shadows stretched long and dark near the pit where little Jamie struggled. The thick mud clung to his legs like a trap, stubborn and unyielding. His tiny arms flailed. Weakly, his breath coming in short gasps as panic fluttered behind his wide eyes. Not far away, just beyond the line of twisted roots and fallen leaves, a sleek figure watched quietly. The German Shepherd mother stood motionless, her ears alert and her sharp eyes fixed on the trapped child. Her tawny coat blended perfectly with the dappled forest floor, and her nose twitched as she sniffed the air, drinking in every scent. Behind her, a litter of 5 fluffy puppies tumbled over one another in innocent play, their high-pitched yips and yelps contrasting the tense silence near the mud. The mother dog's gaze never wavered. She sensed the child's vulnerability, a fragile life caught in a perilous grip. And though instinct told her to be wary of humans, so often unpredictable and loud, something deeper stirred within her, an urge to protect. The puppies, curious and fearless in their youth, began to inch closer, to the muddy edge. One bold pup yipped and pawed the mud, splattering dark liquid onto its fur. The mother growled softly, a warning to keep them back, but she herself took a tentative step toward the child. Jamie's cries had slowed, replaced by small hiccups and desperate attempts to stay calm. When the dog approached, he blinked up at her with tear-filled eyes. The German Shepherd lowered her head gently, careful not to startle him. She pressed her wet nose against his tiny hand, as if to say, "You're safe for now." At the sound of approaching footsteps, the mother dog's body stiffened. She immediately stepped between Jamie and the forest, a fierce guardian shielding her charge. Her low growl rumbled in her throat, warning unseen threats to keep their distance. The puppies followed close behind, instinctively forming a protective ring around their mother. The sound belonged to Jamie's parents. Sarah's voice trembled with both hope and fear as she called, "Jamie, sweetheart, hold on, we're coming." David was close behind, scanning the edge of the clearing for any sign of his son. The dog's amber eyes met Sarah's desperate gaze. For a moment, neither moved. It was a silent standoff between human desperation and animal caution. Sarah took a small, careful step forward, her hands outstretched in peace. "It's okay, girl. We just want to help." The German Shepherd's growl softened, but did not vanish. She sniffed the air again, sensing no immediate danger, yet remained protective. Her puppies, now clustered close to the mud's edge, watched intently, their innocent faces filled with curiosity and concern. Sarah crouched down slowly, whispering softly to Jamie, "We're right here, baby. We'll get you out." The child's small fingers curled weakly around a muddy twig, the only thing keeping him steady. The dog's presence beside him seemed to comfort Jamie, giving him courage to stay calm despite the sinking mud. David had called emergency services and was now coordinating with Sarah, trying to figure out the best way to extract Jamie without causing further harm. The muddy ground was treacherous, and any sudden movement might pull the toddler deeper or frighten the dog into fleeing. The German Shepherd's ears flicked back, listening to the distant wail of sirens approaching. She stayed vigilant, watching every move around her. This wasn't just a wild animal anymore. She had chosen a role, guardian of a child in peril. Minutes stretched painfully long. The forest noises, the rustling leaves, distant bird song, and faint puppy yips felt distant compared to the raw tension at the muddy edge. Jamie's parents whispered reassurances. The dog remained silent but steady, and the puppies curled around the clearing like living cushions of warmth. Suddenly, one of the pups let out a soft whine and scampered closer to Jamie, nuzzling his muddy arm. The toddler giggled faintly, a small spark of joy in the midst of fear. The German Shepherd watched, eyes shining with a strange kind of hope. No one could have predicted that in this moment of crisis, an unspoken bond was forming, one that would change everything. The clearing seemed suspended in time, a fragile pocket where nature and human desperation collided. Jamie's small body remained trapped, his legs swallowed by the thick mud that clung like a vice. Yet amidst the fear and uncertainty, and unlikely, Guardian stood firm. The German shepherd mother's eyes gleamed with fierce determination. Her body was tense but calm, a perfect balance of strength and gentleness. With one careful step forward, she lowered herself closer to Jamie, her muzzle nearly brushing his tiny cheek. The smell of earth and wet fur mingled with the scent of the baby's warm skin. Jamie reached out, his little hand trembling but curious. The dog nudged gently, as if testing his trust, and when Jamie's fingers brushed her fur, a flicker of comfort passed between them. It was an unexpected connection, the innocence of a child and the protective heart of a mother dog, drawn together by circumstance and instinct. Around them, the puppies bounded closer, their playful yips turning into quiet observation. One particularly bold pup crawled forward and rested its head on Jamie's muddy leg, its soft fur a surprising balm against the cold mud. Jamie giggled, his fear melting for a moment under the warmth of furry companionship. Sarah knelt nearby, tears catching in her eyes as she watched the interaction. She whispered softly, "Thank you," unsure if the dog could understand, but grateful nonetheless. David's hand rested on her shoulder, his own eyes fixed on their son, willing the rescue to come quickly. The German shepherd's growl, low and protective, warned off a nearby crow that dared to approach too close. The dog's loyalty was clear. This child was under her watch, and she would not let harm come to him. But the danger of the mud remained. Jamie's feet were still trapped, the suction of the earth relentless. His breath hitched occasionally, as the effort to stay afloat took its toll. The mud was deceptively deep, a hidden trap waiting to pull him under completely. Suddenly, a crackling sound came from the forest edge, the distant voices of rescuers and the approach of a small team, of local volunteers who had arrived after David's call. Their shouts echoed faintly as they hurried toward the clearing, armed with ropes and wooden boards, ready to attempt a delicate extraction. The German shepherd mother's ears flattened, her growl growing louder, warning the approaching humans to keep their distance. The puppies scattered briefly, sensing the tension spike. It was clear she would not allow strangers near her charge without a fight. Sarah stepped forward, arms raised in a calming gesture. "It's okay, girl. We're here to help your baby." Her voice was steady but kind, every word an attempt to bridge the gap between human and animal. The dog's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but slowly softened, as if weighing the truth. In Sarah's tone, David moved cautiously, setting down a plank near the muddy pit, trying to create a stable path. The rescuers communicated in hushed tones, outlining the plan to extract Jamie slowly, without sudden moves that might upset the dog or endanger the child further. The German shepherd remained a silent sentinel, her body rigid but no longer aggressive. She lowered herself, keeping Jamie between her front paws like a protective shield. The puppies gathered close, their presence a comforting circle around the trapped toddler. Jamie's tiny voice, weak but steady, called out, "Doggy, help!" It was the first time he had spoken since being trapped, and the sound stirred something in everyone present. The dog seemed to understand, her eyes shining with an almost human tenderness. Sarah reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of cloth. She waved it gently, coaxing the dog's attention. The mother dog sniffed the cloth and then pressed her head into Sarah's hand briefly, a sign of trust that shocked everyone. In that moment, the forest's quiet watch was broken by the growing sound of determination, the team ready to pull Jamie free, united by the silent bond between child and dog. No one could have predicted this alliance born out of fear and hope, but it would prove crucial. As the rescue began, the dog stayed close, her watchful gaze never leaving Jamie's face. The puppies nestled against their mother's side, their bright eyes wide with anticipation. The forest held its breath again, waiting for what would come next. The sun continued its slow descent, casting longer shadows across the forest floor. The once bright afternoon was now tinged with the urgency of approaching evening. The air felt heavier, as if the forest itself knew that time was running out. Jamie's small frame remained trapped in the mud, his legs stuck deep beneath the thick, cold earth. Each breath was a struggle, and the panic that had once bubbled in his eyes had softened to a frightened, desperate hope. His tiny hands clung to the muddy edge, fingers trembling but determined not to give up. Sarah's voice cracked as she called to her son again. "Jamie, sweetheart, please hold on. Help is almost here." Tears streamed down her cheeks, mixing with the dirt smudged on her face. David stood nearby, phone pressed to his ear, repeating the location and details to the emergency dispatcher. The minutes felt like hours. The German Shepherd mother remained unwavering, her body tense but still protective. She paced near the mud's edge, ears swiveling at every sound, growling low and warning off curious animals and onlookers. The puppies, huddled together, their innocent presence a stark contrast to the dire situation. Nearby, the faint echo of sirens pierced the forest's quiet, a sound of hope. The rescue team was on its way. Volunteers from the nearby town had quickly gathered, armed with boards, ropes, and tools to aid in the extraction. Their footsteps grew louder as they neared the clearing. Sarah could hardly contain her anxiety. Every second counted. The mud was a silent enemy, pulling Jamie deeper with every movement. His clothes were soaked, the grime clinging cold and heavy to his skin. Sarah's mind raced with fear. What if he slipped too far? What if the rescuers didn't arrive in time? David paced, glancing between the approaching figures and his trapped son. "Stay calm, Jamie," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "We're going to get you out." The rescuers arrived and quickly assessed the situation. They exchanged hurried but calm words, planning a careful approach. The mud was tricky terrain, and the baby's safety was paramount. One rescuer, a local forestry expert named Mike, knelt beside the clearing and examined the pit. "This mud is thick and deep," Mike explained softly. "If we rush, Jamie could sink further. We need to use boards to distribute our weight and ropes to pull him slowly." Sarah nodded, gripping David's hand. "Please be careful," she pleaded. The German Shepherd's growl grew more insistent as the rescuers prepared their equipment. She positioned herself directly between Jamie and the humans, her eyes flashing with a fierce warning. The tension was palpable, a fragile standoff between protection and rescue. Mike raised his hand in a calming gesture. "Let's keep calm and move slowly," he instructed. The team spread the boards carefully across the mud, creating a makeshift platform. Jamie's mother spoke softly to the dog, trying to soothe her. "We're not here to hurt you. We just want to save Jamie." For a brief moment, the dog hesitated. Her eyes locked with Sarah's, and something passed between them, an understanding, born of desperation and hope. Slowly, the growling ceased, and the dog retreated slightly, giving the rescuers a narrow path. Jamie watched, his gaze flickering between the dog and the approaching strangers. The puppies remained close, their presence strangely comforting. The team attached ropes around Jamie's waist and legs, careful not to tighten too much. Then, with slow, steady tugs, they began to pull. The mud resisted, sucking Jamie down inch by inch, but the rescuers held firm. Jamie's breath hitched as he felt the slow, upward pull, the slim hope that kept him fighting. Suddenly, a small slip. The mud loosened and Jamie shifted dangerously. The dog growled sharply, her body tensing again, ready to defend. Sarah whispered, words of reassurance to both the dog and her son, calming the moment. Then with one final pull, Jamie's legs broke free from the mud's grip. Cheers erupted quietly as the rescuers lifted him onto the boards. Jamie was soaked and trembling, but alive. The mother dog relaxed, her protective posture softening as she watched Jamie being carried away. The puppies barked joyfully, sensing the danger had passed. Sarah cradled Jamie in her arms, tears of relief flowing freely. "You're safe now, baby," she whispered, rocking him gently. David looked down at the dog, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you," he said softly. The forest seemed to exhale as the danger faded, but everyone knew the memory of the rescue, the desperate fight against time, and the unexpected protector would linger forever. The muddy clearing had transformed from a place of terror into one of relief and cautious celebration. Jamie, wrapped in a warm blanket brought by one of the rescuers, was nestled safely in his mother's arms. His small body was shivering from cold and shock, but his wide eyes glowed with curiosity and newfound trust. The danger had passed, but the journey to recovery was only beginning. Sarah stroked Jamie's wet hair, whispering soothing words. "You're safe now, sweetheart. You're going to be okay." Tears still traced gentle paths down her cheeks as she pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead. David stood nearby, speaking quietly to the rescue team and coordinating with the paramedics, who had just arrived. Yet, in the midst of the human relief and hustle, the German shepherd mother remained close by the edge of the clearing. Her eyes, still watchful but softer now, never left Jamie. The protective stance had softened into quiet companionship, as if she understood that her role as guardian had not ended with the rescue but was evolving. The puppies bounced excitedly around their mother's legs, their fluffy bodies bright spots of life against the fading daylight. They approached Jamie cautiously, sniffing his blanket and chubby hands with innocent curiosity. Jamie giggled, a sound of pure joy, reaching out to touch a curious puppy's nose. The dog nuzzled gently in return, and the connection between child and animal deepened. The rescue team gathered their equipment, quietly discussing the next steps. Mike, the forestry expert, knelt down to inspect the muddy pit once more. "This area will need to be marked off," he said. "We don't want another accident like this." David nodded in agreement. "I'll make sure to put up signs and keep the area safe." Sarah's gaze drifted back to the German shepherd. "She saved Jamie," she whispered, almost in disbelief. "I want to thank her properly." One of the rescuers smiled. "That's her home," he said. "She and her puppies live in the woods nearby. They're wild but protective. You're lucky she was here." Sarah approached the dog slowly, her hands extended in peace. The mother dog watched carefully, but instead of retreating, she allowed Sarah to come close. The air between them seemed charged with unspoken gratitude. Sarah gently stroked the dog's head, feeling the warmth of her fur and the steady heartbeat beneath. "You're incredible," she said softly. Jamie's laughter filled the air as he reached up and hugged the dog's neck, his little arms wrapping around the thick fur. For a moment, the forest seemed to embrace them all, a fragile family formed by fate and compassion. As paramedics took Jamie for a full checkup, Sarah and David lingered near the dog and her puppies. They decided to bring food and fresh water for the family, wanting to repay the kindness that had saved their son. Over the following days, a routine emerged. Sarah returned to the clearing each morning with a basket of supplies, dog food, water bowls, and blankets for the puppies. The German shepherd mother welcomed her cautiously at first, but gradually accepted the offerings, her tail wagging softly. Jamie's laughter grew louder each visit, his trust in the dog blossoming. The puppies tumbled and played, and the bond between child and canine family deepened, healing wounds that no words could reach. Neighbors heard the story and soon joined in, bringing blankets, food, and toys for the puppies. The small community rallied around the dog family and the Miller family, inspired by the extraordinary connection born from a moment of crisis. David began working with local animal rescue groups, hoping to ensure the German Shepherd and her puppies would be cared for and protected. The dog's loyalty and courage had touched everyone, proving that sometimes the strongest bonds are forged in the unlikeliest places. Meanwhile, Jamie's recovery was steady. Doctors confirmed no serious harm had come from the ordeal, though he was kept under observation for a few days. Sarah stayed by his side, often telling him the story of the brave dog who had watched over him in the mud. Jamie's favorite part was when the dog and her puppies came to visit him at home, tails wagging and eyes bright. The child's world expanded, filled with love and trust beyond words. In the quiet moments, Sarah often thought about the day that had started with fear and ended in hope. The forest, the mud, and the loyal German Shepherd had all come together to teach her family something profound. Sometimes the greatest heroes have 4 legs and a heart full of courage. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Jamie and the German Shepherd family deepened in ways no one could have anticipated. What had begun as a rescue in a muddy pit blossomed into a remarkable friendship, a story whispered through the town like a living legend. Jamie's parents, Sarah and David, watched with a mixture of awe and gratitude. Each visit to the forest clearing revealed a little more of the gentle relationship between their son and the dog family. The German Shepherd mother, once cautious and wary of humans, now allowed Sarah and David to approach, their hands full of treats and affection. The puppies, too, grew stronger and more playful. Their once timid wobbles turned into energetic bounds as they explored their surroundings, always careful to stay close to Jamie. The toddler's laughter echoed through the trees, a melody of joy that seemed to chase away the shadows of that frightening day. One morning, Sarah noticed something remarkable. Jamie, usually shy with strangers, confidently reached out to one of the puppies, gently petting its soft fur. The pup responded with excited tail wags and a happy bark, inviting more play. "That's amazing," Sarah whispered to David. "He's not afraid anymore. He's happy." David smiled, watching his son's face light up. "That dog saved his life, but I think they saved each other." Jamie's recovery had gone beyond the physical. The fear that had once gripped him seemed to dissolve with every wag of a tail and every lick of a warm nose. He learned to trust not just the dog, family, but the world around him again. At the same time, Sarah and David began learning more about the German Shepherd mother. Locals told stories of her, how she had once been a family dog before circumstances forced her to live wild. Her fierce loyalty and protective nature were known throughout the nearby woods. One afternoon, Sarah brought a small camera with her, hoping to capture some moments of their growing bond. She crouched near the clearing, Jamie by her side, watching as the puppies tumbled and played in the soft grass. The mother dog approached quietly, her eyes soft and warm. Jamie reached out and touched her head, his small fingers stroking the familiar fur. The dog nuzzled his hand gently, a sign of deep trust. Sarah snapped a photo just as one of the puppies leapt onto Jamie's lap, its tiny paws wriggling with excitement. The image captured more than a moment. It captured a miracle. Over time, the family began to visit the clearing regularly. Sarah and David brought food and water, blankets for the puppies, and toys that Jamie had outgrown. The German Shepherd mother accepted their gifts gratefully, and the puppies grew healthy and strong. Jamie's confidence soared. He began walking further into the woods, always with a careful eye on the dogs who had become his closest friends. The once fearful toddler now ran and laughed alongside them, his tiny feet barely touching the soft earth. The community also rallied around the story. Neighbors volunteered to help care for the dogs and keep the forest path safe. Local schools invited Sarah to share the tale, teaching children about kindness, bravery, and the unexpected heroes who live among us. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Jamie sat quietly beside the German Shepherd. "Mother." She rested her head on his lap, eyes half closed in contentment. Sarah watched from a distance, her heart full. The child who had been trapped in the mud was now surrounded by love and trust, healed by the very creatures who had watched over him. David joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulder. "This bond, it's something special." Sarah nodded. "It's more than we ever hoped for." As the days grew warmer, the family planned to bring the dogs to a local animal rescue group, ensuring they would have a safe home and care. The thought was bittersweet. The dogs belonged to the forest, yet deserved protection and love. Jamie seemed to understand, hugging the mother dog tightly. "Stay safe," he whispered. The German Shepherd lifted her head, licking his cheek in response. The puppies barked softly, as if promising they would be okay. In the quiet of the forest clearing, beneath the rustling leaves and fading light, a story of trust and survival continued to grow. From the depths of fear and mud, a family was forged, one not bound by blood but by courage, kindness, and an unbreakable bond. The day dawned crisp and clear, sunlight streaming through the trees and casting warm golden patches across the forest floor. For Jamie and his family, it was a day of both celebration and change. A new chapter in the story that had started, with fear but blossomed into hope. Sarah packed a small bag filled with essentials, fresh dog food, water bowls, blankets, and toys. Beside her, Jamie clutched his favorite stuffed animal, his wide eyes sparkling with excitement and a hint of nervousness. David secured the car trunk, preparing for the journey ahead. Today was the day the German Shepherd mother and her puppies would be taken to a local animal rescue center. It was the safest option, ensuring the dogs would have veterinary care, food, and shelter, while still giving the family the chance to visit and maintain the bond they had formed. As they arrived at the forest clearing, the familiar sights and smells welcomed them warmly. The mother dog was already waiting, standing tall and proud, her fur gleaming in the morning light. The puppies tumbled around her, full of energy and curiosity. Jamie ran forward, laughing with delight. "Hi, doggy!" "Hi, puppies!" His tiny arms reached out, and the mother dog leaned down, licking his cheek affectionately. Sarah knelt beside her son, speaking softly. "We're going to help the dogs, Jamie. They'll be safe and happy, just like you." David approached. The dogs with the food and blankets, setting everything down carefully. The German Shepherd sniffed the offerings and wagged her tail, a clear sign of trust and gratitude. The rescue workers arrived soon after, gentle and knowledgeable. They spoke quietly to Sarah and David, explaining the process and reassuring them that the dogs would be well cared for. Jamie watched closely as the mother dog and puppies were gently placed into crates, their eyes wide but calm. The family promised to visit often, to keep the connection alive. As the vehicle drove away, carrying the dogs toward their new home, Jamie waved, tears sparkling in his eyes. The goodbye was bittersweet, filled with sadness and hope intertwined. Back. At home, life settled into a peaceful rhythm. Jamie's laughter continued to fill the house, and the memories of the dog family became treasured stories told at bedtime. Sarah and David often looked at the photos Sarah had taken during those first days, reminders of how courage and kindness had saved their son. Months passed, and the rescue center sent updates. The German Shepherd mother was thriving, her coat shiny and healthy. The puppies were growing fast, playful, and full of spirit. Jamie's visits brought joy to everyone. The dogs recognized him immediately, wagging tails and excited barks welcoming their young friend. One afternoon, Sarah and David joined Jamie at the rescue center. Watching their son interact with the dogs, They saw a transformation, a child who had faced fear and come out braver, surrounded by a circle of love that crossed species. Jamie knelt beside the mother dog, gently brushing her fur. The puppies tumbled around his feet, their playfulness infectious. For a moment, time seemed to stand still, a perfect snapshot of harmony and healing. Sarah smiled, whispering, "Thank you, all of you, for saving Jamie and for teaching us all what family really means." David squeezed her hand, eyes shining. "Sometimes the strongest bonds are the ones you never expect." Jamie laughed, chasing a puppy as it darted around the yard. The dog family had become an inseparable part of his life, a symbol of hope born from the depths of mud and fear. As the sun set, painting the sky with colors of pink and orange, Sarah, David, and Jamie stood together, watching the dogs play. In the distance, the forest that had once been a place of danger was now a sanctuary of friendship and trust. In the quiet peace of that evening, they all knew one thing for certain. Every ending was just a new beginning. Life, as Sarah and David had learned, could change in a moment. A single misstep, a sudden slip into the mud, had transformed their world, and in ways they never imagined. Now, months later, the family was forever changed, bound by a story of courage, survival, and unexpected friendship. Jamie, once a frightened toddler trapped in the cold mud, was now a lively, curious boy whose smile could brighten any room. The trauma of that day had faded, replaced by the warmth of memories filled with love and trust. His bond with the German Shepherd, mother, and her puppies had become a shining example of hope. On a bright spring morning, the Millers gathered in their backyard, the scene alive with laughter and movement. Jamie ran across the grass, chasing one of the playful puppies who had been adopted from the rescue center. The pup's tail wagged furiously as it dodged and darted around the little boy's feet. Sarah watched her son with a heart full of gratitude. The rescue had done more than save Jamie's life. It had brought a new family into theirs. The German Shepherd mother, now named Luna by the rescue volunteers, had become a symbol of resilience and loyalty. Her puppies had found homes with loving families, but a few still stayed close, visiting often and reminding the Millers of how their lives had intertwined. David joined Sarah on the porch, a soft smile on his face. "It's incredible to see how far Jamie's come," he said quietly, "and how much those dogs have healed all of us." Sarah nodded. "It's like they saved us in more ways than one." The journey hadn't been easy. The days following the rescue were filled with sleepless nights, doctor visits, and countless what-ifs. But every moment of fear had given way to strength, not just in Jamie, but in the entire family. Community support had been overwhelming. Neighbors, once strangers, became friends who shared in the joy of the miraculous rescue. Local schools invited Sarah to speak about compassion and bravery, spreading the message that sometimes heroes come in the form of four-legged friends. Jamie's favorite part of the story was always the moment Luna stood guard, fierce and protective, as the rescuers pulled him from the mud. "She was my hero," Jamie often said, hugging the dog with pure love, and Luna, with her deep, intelligent eyes, seemed to understand. She was calm and gentle around Jamie, always near, as if she knew her job was not done, that she was now part of this family forever. One afternoon, Sarah found herself writing a letter to the rescue center volunteers, thanking them for their tireless work and care. She included photos of Jamie playing with Luna and the puppies, hoping to capture the spirit of the story, a story that inspired more than just her family. As the letter was mailed, Sarah felt a deep sense of peace. The fear that had gripped her months ago was replaced by hope and a profound belief in the power of kindness. The forest clearing, once a place of danger, had been transformed in the community's heart. Signs were posted to warn and protect others from the hidden mud pits. Local volunteers organized cleanup days, ensuring the area was safe for children and families. But more than that, the story of the boy trapped in the mud and the brave German shepherd had become a symbol, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, light could be found, in courage, in friendship, and in the unbreakable bonds we form. Years later, Jamie would remember the day in the mud, not with fear, but with gratitude. The moment he met Luna and her puppies was the moment his life changed forever. And as he grew, so did his love for animals and nature. A passion sparked by a day of fear and transformed by a family of dogs who chose to protect a child in need. Sarah. And David knew that the story would live on, told and retold, inspiring hearts and reminding everyone that sometimes the smallest heroes leave the biggest marks. In the end, it wasn't just a rescue from the mud, it was a rescue of the heart.